T-minus 20 seconds.
Stage 2 tanks pressing for flight. Flight computer has control of the vehicle.
Do we see anything on the sensors? That's a problem.
No, nothing.
I'll say go for launch.
SpaceX was born out of a desire to get NASA and the world to believe in going back into space and pushing Earth to try and reach not just for the stars, but to go to other planets. Eventually, SpaceX became the go-to place to get spacecrafts to launch into space for various missions, including ones that go to the International Space Station. But during all that time, SpaceX has still been working on getting itself to Mars, and their Starship is their best hope for doing that in their minds. But is it really something we can believe in? Allow us to give you a look inside the Starship of SpaceX. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Number 5. The early March launch and explosion. SpaceX has been doing a lot of launches recently with their various crafts, and they did another test of their Starship on March 3rd, and SpaceX was more than happy to document it on their website. On Wednesday, March 3rd, Starship serial number SN10 successfully completed SpaceX's third high-altitude flight test of a Starship prototype from our site in Cameron County, Texas. Similar to the high-altitude test flights of Starship SN8 and SN9, SN10 was powered through ascent by 3 Raptor engines, each shutting down in sequence prior to the vehicle reaching apogee, approximately 10 kilometers in altitude. SN10 performed a propellant transition to the internal header tanks, which hold landing propellant, before reorienting itself for re-entry and a controlled aerodynamic descent. The Starship prototype descended under active aerodynamic control, accomplished by independent movement of 2 forward and 2 aft flaps on the vehicle. All 4 flaps were actuated by an onboard flight computer to control Starship's altitude during flight and enabled a precise landing at the intended location. SN10's Raptor engines reignited as the vehicle performed the landing flip maneuver immediately before successfully touching down on the landing pad. As if the flight test was not exciting enough, SN10 experienced a rapid, unscheduled disassembly shortly after landing. All in all, a great day for the Starship teams. These test flights are all about improving our understanding and development of a fully reusable transportation system designed to carry both crew and cargo on long-duration interplanetary flights and help humanity return to the moon and travel to Mars and beyond. Did you catch it? The joke masking part of the truth? Because while it's true that the SN10 did launch into the sky and land, it didn't last. Listing slightly to one side as an automated fire suppression system trained a stream of water on flames still burning at the base of the rocket, the spacecraft blew itself to pieces about 8 minutes after touchdown. It was the third such landing attempt to end in a fireball after an otherwise successful test flight for the Starship being developed by SpaceX to carry humans and 100 tons of cargo on future missions to the Moon and Mars. There's many ways to look at this, and for Elon Musk, he took it as well as could be expected. In a tweet responding to tempered congratulations from an admirer of his work, Musk replied, "Rest in peace, SN10, honorable discharge." But while this may sound like an outright failure, it's honestly not. As noted, this is a prototype, and prototypes are meant to showcase the flaws so that they can be fixed. So if they can account for that, they might be able to make it much safer, and thus make it better for the next version in SN11, which we would bet launches within the next month. Plus, we know that SpaceX makes good rockets and vessels because they've taken people up to the ISS, as well as just had another successful launch of their Falcon 9 rocket that has been launched now for a record 9th time and landed back on the ground without issue. So with enough time, the Starship will be what it needs to be. At least we hope. Number 4. The SpaceX Starship Overview. SpaceX's Starship spacecraft and Super Heavy rocket, collectively referred to as Starship, represent a fully reusable transportation system designed to carry both crew and cargo to Earth orbit, the Moon, Mars, and beyond. Starship will be the world's most powerful launch vehicle ever developed, with the ability to carry in excess of 100 metric tons to Earth orbit. At first, this description from SpaceX may not seem like much, but don't be fooled. There's honestly a lot going on here, not the least of which is that this is meant to be a reusable Starship. For decades, any flights into space would require a lot to get up there, including massive engines, and then the craft would slowly but surely break apart piece by piece as the mission went on. Eventually, these spacecrafts would end up in a state where a basic pod would take the pilots into the ocean so that they'd have to be picked up by a nearby Navy vessel. Here, though, that wouldn't be the case. You'd go up in one ship, and then you'd come back down in that very same ship, which would then allow SpaceX to use the ship again for when the time came for the next launch. This simple change in tactics not only signifies the great leap in technology that we've undergone since the early days of the Apollo missions, but also shows a great financial change in how space travel can be done. The end goal, of course, as noted by Elon Musk, is to have a fleet of these starships send various people one ship after the other to Mars to help colonize it. That's why these launch tests are so important, because once they get a successful launch, they'll reuse that same ship to do the next test and further prove its reusability. Number 3. Ability to deliver satellites. Starship is designed to deliver satellites further and at the lower marginal cost per launch than our current Falcon vehicles. With a payload compartment larger than any fairing currently in operation or development, Starship creates possibilities for new missions, including space telescopes even larger than the James Webb. Here's another element that can't be ignored and is another reason why the Starship is being watched by so many. As of now, putting satellites or telescopes into space can sometimes be a hard endeavor in various ways. Not to mention, even if you put them into space, waiting for certain probes to reach destinations or satellites to line up properly can be a hassle. And again, they can really only do it one at a time. But with the Starship, with its ability to bring lots of cargo into space, it can do the work in a fraction of the time, launch the telescope or satellite into space, and then come back down to Earth for its next mission. Or if they want to launch a deep space probe, they can get that done faster and get it into position quicker via the Starship's engines. This vessel has a lot of potential, and SpaceX wants to make the most of it in every way possible. But of course, the main goal is still set. Number 2. The Mars mission. Starship will enter Mars' atmosphere at 7.5 kilometers per second and decelerate aerodynamically. The vehicle's heat shield is designed to withstand multiple entries, but given that the vehicle is coming into Mars' atmosphere so hot, we still expect to see some ablation of the heat shield, similar to wear and tear on a brake pad. If you were to ask Elon Musk what the one true goal of SpaceX is, it'd have to be that he doesn't just want to get humanity to Mars, he wants to set up a colony there. Now, yes, the origins of SpaceX were simply to go and get humanity interested in making spaceships and getting back into space again, which he's done in numerous ways. But as he realized the potential that his company had, he set his sights higher, and he's claimed that within this decade, we will go to Mars. A bold claim, and it won't be an easy trip even with their advancements. But to get to Mars, to truly take the next step in humanity's spreading out amongst the stars, it's an opportunity too good to pass up. Number 1. The Lunar Mission. If you're thinking that going right to Mars is a bit of a leap based on what the Starship has shown so far, you wouldn't be alone in that. That's why SpaceX has another idea in mind first. In 2023, Japanese entrepreneur Yusaku Maezawa and the crew of Dear Moon will become the first civilian passengers on a lunar Starship mission, featuring a flyby of the moon during their week-long journey. The Dear Moon project is currently accepting applications for 8 civilians to join Yusaku Maezawa on the Starship flight, an important step toward enabling access for people who dream of traveling to space. And that's it right there. It's about the dream. The dream of going into space with your fellow man and not just being done by highly trained astronauts. Space is still an idea or dream for so many people. But if the Starship is able to work the way SpaceX plans it to, it can change so many things for so many people. That's why SpaceX is trying to test as much as possible, so that they can make the ship they need to get people into space and what lies within it. So what do you think? What do you think of this look at the SpaceX Starship and what it brings to the table in terms of not just space travel, but the ability to get us to Mars? Do you think that with enough adjustments, the Starship will be able to complete its mission and take humanity to another world? How long before you think that happens? Do you think Elon Musk's goal of reaching Mars this decade is a possible one? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.